We're live in the morning, 7:28. Hope you get up and get your projects going. That's what we're talking about this morning. A little bit of motivation for you to get out in the garage, into the shop, into the field. I got food in my face. Milo, why didn't you tell me, huh? What are you doing, huh? What are you doing, huh? He's not even getting up. So how's everybody doing this morning? Today we are going to talk about, the thumbnail that I posted is a Brian Tooley Racing cam, but it could be anybody's cam. So the question for today is, but make sure to go out and get your projects done. The question for today is, how much money is the extra power worth? For instance, if you take a look at the video that I posted yesterday, and we have more going up today, the video I posted yesterday, we ran a comparison between the stock cam this was on the 5.3, and the Truck Norris cam, and the Sloppy Stage 2 cam, and the Brian Tooley Racing Hot Rod cam. I didn't look to see what these things sell for or are currently going for, but if one of them is more than the other, let's say you can get a really good deal on a Sloppy Stage 2 cam, which isn't unusual, obviously, at all, and that the Brian Tooley Hot Rod cam, for instance, costs more, it does make more power. So it's 10 or 12 horsepower more on the top, kind of the same for a lot of the range if you look at the power curves. The question then becomes, if one of them is more expensive and one of them makes more power, what constitutes a good deal? Like, how much would people spend for that extra 10 horsepower? Would you rather save $10 and not get the 10 horsepower? At what point does it become, does the cam that offers less power but has a better price, where is that crossover point? Like, what is that? Like, if it's $100 less, if a cam is $300 and then one makes 10 less horsepower but it's only $200, I think probably most people are going to take this. So let me know. And I think most people are probably going to not go with the 10 horsepower, especially if what you have is a budget of $200, you're going to get a $200 cam because that's what you have to do. But if you have the choice of getting either one, at what point does it become a good deal? If you have to if it makes more power in your racing and you have to get 10 more horsepower, you're going to spend the money because that's what racers do. That's why racing is so expensive, because the problem is that getting the big part of it doesn't cost very much. Getting the last little bit, when you're doing a development program or something, that's what becomes very, very expensive. The last few horsepower that you find is ultimately way more expensive than the first 100 or 200 or 300 that you find. The last 2 or 3 would get really, really expensive. So then where is that break even point? If it's $10 more, and is that still a good deal? Is it 20, 30, 40? What is the break even point? I'm curious to know. So let me know in the comments if you guys, if one cam is $50 more, is that still a good deal? Would you spend $50 to get 10 extra horsepower? And then the question also becomes, if it's 10 more horsepower and one of them is making 440 and one of them is making 450, do you notice that? Would you see that anywhere but at the track? And would you see 10 horsepower in comparison to 450 horsepower? Would you see that at the track? Would your combination be consistent enough to go out and run whatever number you're running based on your gearing and transmission and vehicle weight and driving ability and traction and all that? Would you be able to go out and run the number every time with the 440 horsepower combination and then run a better combination with 450 horsepower? The other thing to think about, and I didn't really mention this in the video, is that if you're getting an inexpensive cam, in this case, we're discussing an inexpensive cam that makes less power. That's one aspect of the camshaft. That's the one that we tested on the dyno, because that's what the dyno tells us. But the other aspect of that is the more expensive cam also a better cam? I mean, will it last longer? Does it have better hardness? Does it have a better profile that allows you to run safely higher engine speeds is the cam more stable? Is the load design better? will one of them get better fuel mileage if that's one of the considerations? Will one of them give you the chop? Will one of them give you a better idle, a smoother idle? One of them have better boost response because it has better low speed power. All these other things. I had an interesting comment in the on this video yesterday in the comment section, which obviously I always welcome. So please make a comment, whether it's positive or negative. Although there are comments on there about people trying to, tell me how great of an engine builder they are, and I'm just like, you know what, I don't ever have Kenny Duttweiler call me and say, Richard, I'm a better engine builder than you, or John Causey, or anybody, because they they already know that that's true. And because in those particular instances, those guys are great guys. So if you are better, that's fantastic. But you having to say that tells me that that's likely not true, and also that you're feeling something else that has nothing to do with your ability. So, but I digress. So the question is the better cam a better cam? And then if it is, not only does it get more power, but if it has these other things, then is there more value added there? Like, would you spend more money because one is more stable and allows you to run more RPM, that it's going to last longer, that it's not going to chew up lifters and valve tips and stuff, which is not uncommon for unstable, combinations. It's one thing to put an inexpensive camshaft in your combination and get a good deal. It's another to realize that good deal was, false economy, because now things are going to happen. They're going to ultimately make that even more expensive. And is, like I said, is the 10 horsepower, do you notice that? Is that more for bragging rights? Is it for, can you translate that directly into, I went from a 1280 to a 1270 because of that 10 horsepower? That would probably be, it probably wouldn't change it that much. I went from a 1280 to a 1274 or a 78 with 10 horsepower over compared to 450. Is that part important? Or like I said, are just the bragging rights important? Is it more important to say, I got the better cam, makes more power? Okay, great. But, what did it give you? But if you can list off all of these other things, hey, look, I got this camshaft's going to last. It's not going to chew up lifters. It has better stability. I can run more RPM. I don't have to worry about it. All of those things, obviously, for me, those things, that group of things that we mentioned, is actually, to me, way more important than 10 horsepower is. And it's more important. I would spend more money on that, especially if you're a guy that wants to do this one time. I want to put a camshaft in. When I put camshafts in on the dyno, they're in for like a half an hour, and then they come back out. The motor's still hot. The camshaft's still hot. It's coming out because another one's going in and we're doing testing. And it's easy to do on an engine dyno. If you're a guy at your house or even at a shop and you're doing a cam swap with the engine in the car and you're doing that, you really only want to do that one time. I want to put a cam in. I want to be done with it. I want to get it tuned. I want to drive around. I want to enjoy it. Maybe later on I'll put a turbo on it. I'll change springs. But you don't want to be doing that over and over and over again. So you want that to be the last time that you do it. So when you do that and you have it and you drive around, hopefully for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, as long as you enjoy it, you want the thing to go in there and be right and be that way for a long time. When we go get a wrecking yard motor and run it, that thing has already lasted 5, 10, 20 years, whatever, however long it's been alive, and it's still working. In most cases, with the exception of the 4.8 liter that I did the video on, that one was still running. Obviously, the guy was still driving it, but just not very well. And that happens. But in most cases, these things are still working and running, which tells you how right they were when they first went together. So there is something to be said for, choosing that kind of camshaft that is going to give you the longevity so that you can get the next 100, 200, or 300,000 miles out of this poor wrecking yard motor if that's what you have. So you can, continue to drive it and do that swap one time, spend a little bit more money. For me, that's worthwhile anymore. Back in the day when I was in college and stuff, and I tried to do it, I would have spent less money. And then whatever the consequences were later on, I would have worried about what those consequences were later on. But anymore, after you go through that a few times and things break, then you realize, hey, maybe I should think about that decision going in. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. Is it better to spend a little bit more now and not have to worry about that later? Are you doing this for the long haul? Do you not care about it because I'm only putting the cam in and I'm probably only going to have this car or truck or whatever for a year or 2 years and it will last that long, and after that I don't care about it? That's another perspective, obviously. We need a poll. Let's see. I have to rephrase this. Okay, so if one cam gives you an extra 10 horsepower, is it worth paying $50 extra for it? We'll just use that as our breaking point there. So that will be our poll for this morning. So is 10 horsepower worth $50 extra? Ashley Smith, has anyone run a 706 with you don't want to take 700 thousandths off. You want to take 70 thousandths off. And 70 thousandths would be a lot of milling. I would start to be worried about the strength of you're diminishing your deck thickness quite a bit at 70 thousandths. Most people don't go that much. Yeah, Dan, that's true. That's usually my comment is, well, look, if you're the best engine builder in the world, which is what you're telling me, you need to be in Engine Masters or Formula One or NASCAR or whatever. Then you could really go show those guys like what's what. Richard, you'd be surprised at how many people just look at the big number and nothing else and gladly pay for it. And I think, and that's what I was wondering in the question that I asked, if they will gladly pay for that, is that just bragging rights, or are they actually utilizing that power somehow? And if they are trying to utilize it, is like, how much is 10 horsepower? How much is 10 horsepower on 450 on a 5.3 on a cammed 5.3? How much is that worth in the quarter mile? I mean, is it a tenth? I'd like to see a comparison between the BTR hot rod cam and the sloppy best cam. Well, you see you can get an idea. The best cam I compared to the sloppy stage 2. So it makes less power than the sloppy stage 2, and it makes a little bit more low speed power. So it would be less than, it would definitely make a lot less than the new hot rod cam, because it's a smaller cam, and we talked about that in the video that traditionally the smaller cams make more low speed power, and or a smaller cam makes less top end power and more low speed power. We kind of saw that with the Truck Norris cam. It's milder, it makes a lot more low speed power than the others. It didn't make as much top end power as the others, The exception was the hot rod cam, at least compared to the sloppy stage 2, a 217 versus a 228. That particular 217 cam is better than the sloppy best cam by a pretty fair bit. The only thing I don't know, and I could go back and look and see, is there a trade-off down low? Because between the best cam and the sloppy stage 2, I think that the best cam had a little bit better low speed power. I have not done anything on the 8.1. Somebody was asking about that. Oh, and the mic, I didn't put my mic in again. Okay, I get going early in the morning. So pick the right mic. So we're going to have to put that up there. There. Now I have my note. And it's not even a sticky note. It's gigantic. So hopefully it will remind me to do the right thing. Do the right thing. So how's our poll doing? We have, if one cam gives you an extra 10 horsepower, is it worth paying $50 more for? 62% saying yes, 38% saying no. Let's see. Custom anything costs lots of money. So what's the old saying? Buy once, cry once. Is that it is? How do you know if you have valve float? Well, the way that we know on the dyno is, especially if we have an air hat on it, you can kind of see that the airflow goes down instead of going up, because airflow goes up with engine speed. And also what we have is what I refer to as a geometric crash in the power. So the curve will be going up and then all of a sudden it'll drop down pretty rapidly when you get into valve flow. So it's pretty easy to see. It also, you can hear it on the dyno. It's unhappy, and we don't like having the motor sound unhappy. So let's see what are you rephrasing there? $10 horsepower through the power curve would be something, but just a 10 horsepower peak. Yeah, Lynn, it was from 5,000 on up basically, but not 10 horsepower at 5,000. It got, as we see with RPM, it got to be more of a gain with more engine speed. That's a good point. Peak versus average horsepower, two different animals. It takes 5 average horsepower any day. Yep. Getting a gain all the way through would be nice, but that's really hard to do. Trying to do long haul here. NOS remanufactured Ford 306, going in a 67 Cougar, eventually turbo. Nice. I like those Cougars. My favorite thing about the Cougar is the blinky taillights. The only reason I'd say no is drivability on the street, so cam choice shouldn't be about peak horsepower. I agree. The cam choice, the things that you look at for choosing the right cam or the wrong cam. I don't have my wrong cam shirt on. Choosing the camshaft, there are a lot of things, and peak power would be one of them. Let's see. This is only if you're talking drag racing. This is my opinion. We know that that's worth. You build the motor run at a certain RPM, and your ship points are usually 500 RPM over that. I chose the Truck Norris NSR over the regular because it's my first swap and I'm on a budget. That's good. And that way, I'm surprised that I was talking to Brian about this. I'm kind of surprised that the Truck Norris, the NSR cam, isn't just wildly popular. It seems to be that the regular Truck Norris, more people get that and get springs than buy the NSR version, which I thought would be like a home run, that guys would put that camshaft in and not have to change the springs. Because most guys that have a wrecking yard motor, a 4.8 or a 5.3, or even some of the 6.0s, have the really, you know, I call them the 706 springs, the really low lift springs. And it'd be nice just to be able to put a cam in that goes with those. And so I thought that that would be a great deal, but fewer people are choosing that than we thought would be the case. Cheap injectors always make me paranoid. Yeah, I don't like that, especially after testing some of them. If I'm pushing 85, 53,000 horsepower, is it better to run dual 450 or a dual 525? You should put as much fuel pump in as you can and then just regulate it, because it's never a bad thing to have too much fuel pump. So you're not going to feel the 10 horsepower, but you will feel the $50 leaving your wallet. Putting an LQ4 in my 79 C10, 3,700 pounds, 276 rear gear. Wow, that's a highway flyer, huh? Truck Norris and Springs, Terminator X-Max for cruising weekends. Do you recommend a new converter? I think probably more gear would be the way to go. But a converter, you probably won't need a converter with a Truck Norris and a 6-liter. On drag NA 355 small block Chevy, would going from a solid flat tappet to a solid roller, if both cams have the same specs, friction, load design work. I don't know if just the first of all, if you go from a flat tappet to a roller, the cam profile is not going to be the same. They're going to be ground completely differently. Even if they have the same lift and duration and LSA, the load profile is going to be different on a roller cam. And the gain that you get from a solid roller or from any kind of roller cam, the friction is kind of more of a side benefit than your ability to have better ramp rates. And so the cam design itself will make more power, much more than a frictional change will be. For all the guys crying about piston in the cylinder or ball hone, yeah, that set a lot of people off. NSR cam sounds lame. Why does an NSR cam sound lame? No springs required. I would think that would be a positive. Has anyone de-stroked a 6.2 back to a 6.0? So you wouldn't be going back down to a 6.0 if you put a 4.8 stroke in it in a 6.2. It's still going to be smaller than a 6.0, and since a 6.2 and a 6.0 both have the same crankshaft in them, you can't really de-stroke it unless you do a custom crank. Downloading a tune for 150 more foot-pounds on my Project Audi, so I'm assuming a turbo thing where they're turning the boost up and turning the timing up. I guess it depends on what comes with the extra 10 horsepower. In this case, it was just 10 at the top, so it was basically the same everywhere else. Your ball honey did clean the carbon of the piston top, is really nice. Yes, it did do that. The one thing I forgot to do was clean up the ding that the valve made in the piston. I should have dressed that a little bit because that's a hot spot. It's going to detonate. Jose, I have an LQ962 bore. You went with a 4065 bore on a LQ9? with LS3 internals and heads, TSP stage 3 cam. I don't know what the specs are on the stage 3 and the stage 4 cam. Will a stage 4 fit? Is it still have enough piston to wall clearance or piston to valve clearance? Matt, LQ9 799 222 cam, inch and 3/4. Matt, I don't think you're going to get to 500 flywheel horsepower with the 220 cam. Maybe. If you take a look, I have a video up where we ran the 799 heads on the engine dyno and on a 6-liter on the LY6. And it made over 500, but it took a bigger cam than that. Richard, have you done anything with a 2.0 TSI motor I got from a customer with a Golf wanting more power? I haven't. The only ones I've done on the VW stuff is we did some 1.8 T stuff. It's basically just programming and an exhaust. I don't remember if he did it. Might have done a turbo upgrade too. I'd like to see the results of a 4.8 crank and a 6.0. That video is up. I didn't do a 6.0, but I did a 6.2. So we did the 4.8 crank and a 6.2 and you know, de-stroked it, and so we could run 1,000,000 RPM. It's just a smaller 6.2 basically. Have you done any testing with the ceramic spray, or that they would bake on the old pistons so you could hone the cylinder even? They should probably put bigger pistons in. So are you talking about putting the coating, the skirt coating, or the ceramic coating on the top? Usually the ceramic coating doesn't go on the skirt. Usually that's an anti-friction coating. I should have left the carbon in it. I should have left the carbon in that one piston particularly, so at least it would kind of cover over the valve ding. Lazy Hound, I have 45 various V8 new race cams, lots of them unground. So do you just have cores then? Bigfoot, driving semi, stay safe out there, man. Put your foot to the floor, got your back door, and we're out. More boost and fuel injection on a diesel Audi for, yeah. Oh, it's a diesel, okay. Been working on Porsches too long. $50. I thought, Dan, for $50 you just get to say the word Porsche. I know that they won't let you walk into the Porsche trailer for that. They won't even part the velvet ropes for that. Decently priced set of heads for $385 small block Chevy. You can look at the low price stuff like Skip White and those kinds of things, or the Enforcer head. I don't know how much power you're trying to make, but if you're trying to make lots of power, it's gonna have to be a good head. Do you tune fuel, boost, and then timing? We start off like on a boosted motor. We start off with an NA motor, and so we run the motor NA and tune the NA, and then we scale up everything from 100 kPa up to 200 kPa. We just basically double everything, and then we interpolate it so that it's double at twice the at 1 atmosphere, and then you could go up from there with more boost. And then what I do is we will run low boost, and then we will tune it with low timing, tune the air fuel, get the air fuel where we want it, and then try more boost, and then make sure that we have a good scale that goes upwards with boost. And then once we have the air fuel done, then we will do timing, and then we will do even more boost. Shooting for 450 to 500 horsepower of a 385. That's a realistic range, so you could get that with lots of different heads. The Skip White stuff would definitely do that. Is a few thousandths quench worth it running 11.5 compression on pump gas, thinking 38 versus 44? I honestly don't know that you'd see a difference between those two. Bought them from Gart Racing Engine Auction a few years ago. The lows are full run. So are those small block or big block or whatever, or they're not LS, are they? I'm not sure what they use. They baked on the skirts and then just hauling the cylinder and running it instead of getting new pistons. Seems odd that they would, because usually a coating doesn't add very much. I mean, like half a thou or something. It's not usually very much. One, 2, or 3 millimeters thickness. I haven't ever tried that. With an SR cam, as a rule of thumb, to change the timing set and oil pump, we never do. All of these junkyard motors that I've run have all have the original pumps in them and the original timing sets. Because those still, you know, they were running in the motor when it was running, and they're still working. The gerotor pumps last a long time, as long as guys, especially if guys have changed the oil. If they haven't changed the oil and it gets debris in there, then, you know, you can wear the pump a little bit, but actually they work a long time. How's our poll doing? 64% saying yes, that the 10 horsepower is worth 50 extra bucks, and 36% saying no. My 5.3 stock pistons all have black. They have wear marks on the skirts. Is this normal? Yes. Very, very common. Mostly built for car engines, some are ground and some are reverse rotation. The other thing to look at is are the cam journals a standard small block Chevy cam journal, or are they bigger? Ashley, I think that I got the name right. It's more on one side. That's the thrust side. That would be normal. And are all those cams roller cams? I would imagine if they're for sprint cars. Chet's in the house. I'm always curious about things like this camshaft deal. Is like, how much is that worth? Because I do so much testing where one thing, like the cylinder head stuff, well, one cylinder head made 6 more horsepower than another one. It already gained 100 more than the stock head, but one of them gained 6 more. So do people ignore all of the other ones and just pick the top one that only did that on that combination? And the heads that I got for that test, do all of the heads do that from that manufacturer? Are they all, you know, exactly reproducible like that? Because when you're talking about that sort of range, if I tested 2 or 3 or 5 sets of the same head from the same manufacturer, are they all going to make exactly the same power? I've never tried anything like that, but I always wondered about that. Is the valve job exactly the same, or is the flow exactly the same? Is core shift an issue to where one head will be better than another? You know, all of that stuff is are the questions that I ask. Can you minimize the wear with a longer stroke motor? No, actually, that might be the other way around. And you don't need to minimize the wear. If this is a junkyard LS and it has 200,000 or 300,000 miles on it, then it's not wearing very much. Richard, have you or any of your tuners successfully been able to tune a Sniper or other T throttle body style injection on the dual plane intake? Yeah, I think Ish and Eric have done that at West Tech. It's just that when I've seen the stuff tried on the engine dyno, even if they get it, it just never seemed to be repeatable. Lazy Hound, if you paid $500 for the lot, I don't remember how many there were, but cores are probably worth a good bit of money right now to cam grinders. So if they are, you know, a standard journal size small block Chevy, and then a guy can ground those, talk to cam manufacturers, talk to Comp, talk to Clay Smith, talk to Cam Motion, or somebody that does small block Chevy stuff, and talk to them about cores, because at the very least, they're going to pay you core money for it. Pretty sure that people look at power gains, then price, and then people's reviews when buying the performance parts. You should look at all those things. Quality and support. I agree, Joe. We didn't mention that too much in our discussion before, but customer service, buying something from a company that's there not when you just want to buy something, because they're always there. It seems like guys are always there to take your money. But are they there when you're not spending money? And the flip side is also true. You shouldn't go to a company to get a bunch of information and then buy something somewhere else. Their time is worth money. So if they're helping you, you should support them. But if you buy something and you've already bought it, they should also support you. That stuff is all very, very important. Are you going to do any more Gen 2 LT1 stuff? I would like to. I want to do the 302 combination of the L99 and the LT1. How are you enjoying the tuning on the X-Max? It's the same as the HP for me. So we just put in the numbers that we want for fuel and the numbers that we want for timing, and it's basically the same thing. Cores. Oh, Dan, cores might be worth a lot if they're older with the better quality steel. Those are, Dan, would those, if they're sprint car motors, would those be tool steel cores maybe? They have a Gen 3 6-liter, 30 over flat top, 11.5 to 1 RHS rec port head, 660 springs, 260 intake runners, 625, 232, 238, 113. So that should be a good combination. Eric, I've never done any testing on Subaru stuff other than driven a Subaru WRX like at the racetrack, but not any performance testing. Is a high pressure oil pump in a small block Chevy going to cause problems because of the high oil pressure? It depends. The question isn't that. The question is, do you need that? More pressure is not better. You just need enough pressure. What's your oil recommendation for a modified LS2 cam hot country like Australia? I think I would tend to go with maybe a little thicker oil. We normally run 530 stuff on, you know, if we have a wrecking yard motor that has factory bearing tolerances, we would adjust it depending on if I built something that had different than factory tolerances, which we do normally. We usually put it a little bit more in there, but a 530 works pretty good, but maybe a 540 or even a 1030 or a 1040. Ever used tuner cap for ECU tuning? I don't. I'm not a tuner. I just do my own tuning on the engine dyno with these aftermarket ECUs, but I've never done any in the vehicle tuning. Sprint cars run roller cam steel cores. Kurt made a lot of different class engines. You have to look at them and see if they're cast or billet. Yeah, if they're chock full of billety goodness. William, I don't know. What was your question? Oh, no, that should make decent power. I don't know what your tune is like. Do you have an intake and a carburetor on it? Let's see. What intake do you have on it? If you have a dual plane on it and a carburetor, it could be the tuning on it, but that intake manifold is going to make less power than a stock EFI intake manifold will. So unless you have like we have some of the intakes that we tried, the carbureted stuff, a Super Victor works fairly well, but it still loses a lot of low speed power compared to like a factory LS3 EFI manifold. Richard, is it even worth checking piston valve on an LQ9 cam with a 222 cam? It's fine. You got a lot of clearance there. I'm building 1,000 horsepower inline 6 292 and have no use for them. That's what header are you using on that? Made a mistake of a high pressure oil pump on a small big Chevy. Pushed the oil filter off the block. That'd be a lot of pressure to be able to do that. That's like somebody starting it up on 50 weight when it's dead cold and then putting it to the wood and building 200 pounds of pressure. Should be doing some chassis dyno stuff soon with the GLH. So you have a GLH that you're doing testing on? Carbon fiber cams, that would be a neat trick. I did see carbon fiber valves attempted, and that didn't work out very well. Billy Racing's in the house. Oh, Lazy, you're going to do a Falconer V12 aircraft racing engine head? That's very cool. We saw a couple of those out at those power plants in the airplanes when we were out at the Reno Air Race. I had forgot that they had, because I stopped hearing about those engines long ago. I remember seeing them. Hot Rod did some stories on them, but I forgot until I went out to the Reno Air Races. My buddy Bernie was reminding me, yeah, these are Falconer V12s, which is very, very cool. So that will certainly help with the power production. Working on 82 K5 diesel this week. I don't think a cam will help, but more fuel will help. Which cam do you think gets the best gains for an old-fashioned LS1? There's like 15,000 different cams that you could run on that, and lots and lots of them work good. That's why I do so much cam testing, is you just need to go on the channel and take a look and see what kind of power that you want, and then also consider all of the things that we've discussed in this discussion, in this live feed, because choosing a cam, the best cam, for one guy is completely different than another one. It depends on how you weigh the weight that you put on all the things that we talked about. Is it just peak power? Is it peak torque? Is it average power? Is it not even power? Is it just the chop? Is it good idle quality? Is it fuel mileage? Is it cost? Is it average power production? You know, there's so many things to look at when you're talking about a camshaft. You know, is it a daily driver? Do you want to change the converter? All of this stuff. These are all considerations that only you can decide what will work. All I can do is show you what the power does, really, and then you get to pick from that. Richard, I'd love to see the first TPI versus an idle to 5,000 dual plane. First of all, we'd never do full throttle at idle because you're never at full throttle at idle. So it has to be a more realistic range where you go to full throttle based on your, at least the stock converter, which at the minimum is going to be like 1,800 RPM. So a 2000 RPM sweep on an engine dyno, 2000 to whatever, like on a tune port, that's a realistic thing, but not idle. You're never at wide open throttle at idle. There was always some ported version of a stock TPI, but I've never run a first intake because I thought that the guys at West Tech had one because they had a fuel injection set up on like a 383 that I thought might have been an early version of this first, but I've never tested one. Google 6-liter to 6.2, is it worth it? Only 4 cubic inches or about 8 cubic inches stroke. Seems like nothing. A 6.2 will make more power, and it allows you to put different kinds of cylinder heads on it that could gain you more power. So just the displacement alone, you're also getting usually a compression increase. And then, like I said, the head choice. But a 6.2 with a cam in it definitely makes more power than a 6.0 with the same cam in it. LS1 likes a 220, 232. It also likes a 231, 247, and a 228, 240, and like a million other camshafts. I know we're talking about LSs, but we can talk about anything. But I'm sitting on 2 8.1s, one from the Junkyard and one from an industrial with the Dart intake, and just curious what you think it can make. I've only run a few tests on them. I have the Dart intake to run on the 8.1, but obviously we've already run a turbo on it. And so you can make a lot of power from that combination because it's starting out making pretty decent power out of a 496. So then you just multiply that with boost. It can make a lot of power. What's the difference between Gen 3 LS blocks and Gen 4s? Usually the things that you see right away is they use different head studs. So the Gen 4 uses the shorter, and they're all the same length, whereas in the Gen 3, they're different lengths. I like the Gen 4 better just because of that, because I think that there's more clamp load from the shorter studs. There's communication tunnels for the Gen 4. There's also not on the Gen 4 stuff, not a provision for the cam sensor in the back because they use the cam sensor on the front timing cover. I don't know if the Gen 4 block itself is stronger. I haven't seen too much on that. Is torque increased by more rotational mass? No, power is less if you increase the weight, at least the way that it shows on the dyno. But I think what you're talking about is inertia, which is a different thing. I have an iron 6.0 and can trade for an aluminum 6.2, but the 6.2 needs to be bored. Make sure on the 6.2 you can't go very far on the bore. So I don't think we go any more than 5 or 10 thousandths. So if it needs more than that, then you're gonna have to sleeve it. Richard, would you ever do a big bang with a 6.0 rod and piston combo? You mean put a forge rod and piston in it? We've already done 1500 on a 6-liter, so I think we're probably good on that. Although it would be interesting to see if we could get more than that. But not on a forge rod and piston, because then that's not a big bang. That goes beyond the definition of a big bang motor. Just curious if I had a Gen 4 block laying around, could I use a Gen 3 24X crank in it? Yes. You could put all of the Gen 3 stuff in a Gen 4 block. You can put all the Gen 4 stuff in a Gen 3 block. All of that stuff interchanges. It's just that when you're mixing Gen 3 and Gen 4 internals, then the weight could be off. Would a big heavy flywheel allow you to have a super low idle and lope? I don't think that the weight is going to change that. It may smooth out a lopey cam with more reciprocating weight, I'm kind of thinking, but not a lot. Would you test Subaru stuff if I donated an EJ? No, probably not. We don't have a setup to run that on the engine dyno, so it would take a lot of to get that actually working. But thanks for the offer. Garage 54 did a heavy flywheel test. Is Garage 54 that's the Russian guys, right? That's freaking awesome, because they stacked a whole bunch of them, and as you might imagine, flywheels make the weight makes a difference. Yeah, Salvador, I love those guys. That they do the like coolest, you know, backyard engineering kind of stuff. Getaway, happy to help. So how's our poll doing? 62% saying yes and 38% saying no. If one cam gives you an extra 10 horsepower, is it worth paying $50 for the extra 10 horsepower? Come on, $50. It's only $50. That's not even a, it's only a part of a date night. So what video am I working on today? So after I get off here, I'll be working on, I think, the Truck Norse NSR cam on the 4.8 liter, maybe. I have so many now from all the testing that I did. I have so many on my list. $50 is half a tank of gas. Yeah, we did see, when I was driving, when we were in Southern California, we did see gas in the $4 range. I mean, albeit $4.90 something, but still, it was good to see that. Love the 3800 content. Yeah, I'm excited about running the 3800 again. I haven't run that for quite a while. Looking forward to seeing the difference between the Truck Norse with springs and the Truck Norse NSR. I did that test already too. I paid $4.59 a gallon at Costco. Nice. I'll have to ask my wife when she's gonna go. She gets gas in her car at Costco too. You think half-inch studs are worth it on an LS engine? I honestly don't. I've never used them on the Big Bang motor. Star, thank you very much. Please, if you have a question, let me know. On the, I don't put half-inch head studs in stock blocks. I don't know that you need to do that. On the Big Bang motor, the clamping force of the head studs is more than enough. If you get past that, it's usually because you broke something else or you detonated it. And what we used on that were the CA625. You know, they're basically like diesel grade head studs and MLS gaskets. And then we just had a good surface put on the head and on the block. And when you do that and put those on and put them and install them correctly, I don't think you need to go to a half-inch head stud. I don't think there's deformation in the stud enough to justify a bigger stud. Maybe guys do that, and maybe it makes them feel better, but we didn't see a head gasket problem with that. Looking forward to K24 stuff. I agree. I do want to get back on that. What Gen 4 do you recommend for a Miata swap? You could do an aluminum block 4.8 because I think that they have those. If not, they have aluminum 5.3s certainly. Would you have any interest in running a 3800 with a Holden intake? Yeah, I could try that. I don't know that we're going to see a big difference between that and the intakes that we already ran on the 3800 with taking the inserts in and out, because we have that test up there where you're just basically just changing the runner length in it. I don't know how much different the Holden intake meant. I don't remember seeing one. Have you ever messed with a VG? No, not on the engine dyno. Although I think that Oliver has one of those that we probably could run. My 89 Bronco, the 351 Windsor that has GT40 heads and the GT40 induction, like on the Lightning, is worth changing the stock truck cam to an E303. It will definitely make more power. I mean, that camshaft will probably be worth on that combination 30 or 40 horsepower, maybe. It was nice seeing the $3 gallon stuff when I was going back to Ohio and in the other states. Like some testing with Swirlport TBI small block Chevy heads. I've always wondered how they work with boost. They work the same as every other head. So the head itself is not going to like or not like boost. The combination of whatever you put together with those heads will make some power output, whatever it is, depending on your combination. And then you add boost to that, and then the boost just multiplies whatever is there. William, thank you very much. The Swirlport head is worthless. They're not worthless. They make power, not more power or less power. Well, less power than any aftermarket head, certainly. But if you have that head on a small block Chevy with some kind of cam, it will make some kind of power. It'll make 300 or 320 or whatever, depending on how much cam you put in it. And then it just gets multiplied in their boost. Did you fill up with 93 when you were on the road? Oh, no. Even when I was towing the Omni, but certainly on the way back empty, it's always 87, or in some cases 85, because they had 85 out there. So whatever cheap stuff is, that's what I used. Ever do anything out of Triton V10? No, that is one that I would like to do also. Yeah, everybody hit the like button. I can't see the like button because I have my reminder up here. What length push rod did you use for the 5.7 LM7 stock bottom end with the Tricklo 215 heads? I honestly don't remember. That was a lot of years ago. We used whatever push rod length it needed for those heads. What size header should I run to keep the turbo spooled up with a 6-liter LS first gen turbos right behind the cab? I don't know that you're gonna have a lot of choice in header size for turbo applications. I think most of them are 1 3/4, and that will be fine. There are other considerations besides turbo header size for spool rate. That would be very low on the list of things that you need to worry about. The combination and the turbo sizing, the NA power output and the turbo sizing are the two biggest things, especially the low speed power of whatever your combination is. And then if it's a remote turbo, then exhaust diameter that you have running from the header to the turbo is going to be a thing. 355 with trick flow, twisted wedge head, 510 lift, solid roller. The 510 lift doesn't tell me anything about the camshaft. We need to know what the duration is. I need to know what the intake is. We need to know what the compression is, all of that stuff. Been waiting for years now. Well, I've only been on for 2 years, so can't be too many. 429. Turbo head was a great head in its day. Dan's out. Go work on the lathe. Everybody hit the like button. 235 at 50. 235 is a good size camshaft. And it's a solid roller. Do you have twisted wedge head? Is the twisted wedge head like an as cast one? So I checked out the D-Stroke 6.2 video, Turbo 6.2 versus D-Strokes. As cool as an underdog is, it's not worth the effort. Yeah, I mean, I've had guys argue with me about that, oh, you didn't run the right cam and you didn't rev it high enough, and that the D-Stroke motor comes into its own. The only way that would ever happen is if, one, you have a class limitation where you have to run a specific engine size. The other is if you're also equally limited and you have a specific turbo size, where the smaller displacement, because of the exhaust flow, might be limiting you or might be beneficial compared to running the bigger motor. But what will happen for every application, especially any kind of street application, a bigger motor is going to make more power than the little motor is. That's a universal in racing. And you look at any racing class where they say, look, here's the limit of the size engine that you could make. Everybody builds that size engine. They build the biggest engine that they can because that makes the most power. There isn't a smaller engine choice that's going to make more power because it revs. That's not the thing. So a 6.0 is going to make more than a D-stroke 6.0 unless the other two things could possibly apply. But for any kind of street application, a bigger motor as compared to the D-stroke one is going to have way more low speed response. So the turbo response is going to come up. So the race is already going to be over before, you know, the other one comes up on the cam or whatever. Do dimple ports make a difference in port heads? I saw Eric's deal and I've seen other tests where dimpling the ports, it seems like it takes a long time and it seems like it doesn't help that much. And I don't know of any sort of professional race team in Cup where they would definitely be using that, or Formula One or anywhere that actually uses that. So I don't think that the spinning golf ball thing is different than air flowing through a port. Also, another question: 4.8 and a 6.2 hybrid, would it be cheaper to use a carburetor that's rated 600 to 700 horsepower rated? I don't know. You're talking about two things: a 950 XP and then a 600 to 700 horsepower rated. I don't know what those two things are. Choose your carburetor for the power output that you're making. If you have a D-stroked 6.2, or let's be on the positive side, let's look at that as a big bore 4.8, then it's better, because a big bore 4.8 is better than a 4.8. A D-stroke 6.2 is not better than a 6.2. Why don't you just run a 6.2? Pick the carburetor for the power output that you have. If I'm making 600 or 650 horsepower, it would have a 950 on it. Why spend the time and money, $50 on a new cam to get 10 horsepower? Just turn up the boost. Something I've heard about swirlies is they like very little timing compared to a regular head. Is it the chamber design that the Vortec head definitely wants less timing than most conventional small block heads? A 64cc chamber head is usually going to want less timing than a 76cc chamber head does. That's, you know, that's universal for most different kinds of motors that we test. The bigger chamber heads usually want, we see that in the LS, the 317 head wants more timing than a 706 head does, or a 799. So that wouldn't be unusual. What will be interesting, and we'll see this on the 2.2 turbo stuff, is will the swirl head want less timing than the bathtub or the G head? Jared, is there any specific way to torque the rockers? If it's an LS, we just tighten them all down, and then you go through and torque them, and you just can torque them in order, you know, from one to the other. You don't have to go by the firing order or any of that stuff. I want to say that someone tested leaving the steps in CNC heads versus smoothing out and found the turbulence from the steps flows better. Maybe. I don't know if that's the case, but I do know that I've seen people take those steps out and not improve the flow. It really just makes it look better, and so people feel better about it because they, you know, oh, that flow just got, that's gonna, the steps are going to decrease flow. That's going to hurt. It's going to cause turbulence. No, they're are those cuts in the boundary layer? Probably they are. I'm curious on the swirl ports. Yeah, the swirl port on the 2.2. I am too. I'm curious to see what it wants for timing, and we'll know that when we run that NA, basically. Two more minutes. So I'm going to actually close out our poll at 62%, saying that the 10 horsepower camshaft would be worth an extra $50. We're looking at building a circle track car, 6.0 motor, semi-custom piston, 16 plus cc's to get compression at 14:1. Standard stroke 2-inch headers. Is this too much compression or headers? No, the headers aren't too big. It would be interesting to test to see what RPM you're running in the circle track car, and then what the headers do in that RPM range, and do they help like the driver, like during a restart when he has to get back on the gas? Are they losing stuff down low? And we see that more with the length of tubing after the header, the collector extension length. So pay attention to that part. So because the driver may feel that, he definitely will feel, if you don't have a collector length extension after the header, you'll definitely be able to feel that. I mean, it's a pretty big difference in torque from that. 14:1, I'm a little worried about the flame travel for that piston design. You'll just have to see. But a lot of guys get fixated on more compression, better. Is it? The gain from going from 13:1 to 14:1 is no longer 3 or 4%. It gets down to where it's no percent. Maybe not there. I think that you're still looking at gains going from 13 to 14, but the gain is less than it is going from 10 to 11. $3,000 to $7,000. Cold air, $300 for a few horsepower, maybe 50 for 10. Isn't so bad. Yeah, if you start comparing it to other things, that maybe looks like it's not a bad choice. $355, 10.5 to 1 twisted wedge, yes, cast, 510, 235. And then is it a dual plane intake manifold or a single plane intake manifold? So if you put that up real quick, I'll answer that question, and it's time to get going. Pick the right mic. I'm gonna fold that up so that when I have that up there, it's not in the way of everything. Let's see what we got. There we go. It's a hydraulic roller with solid lifters. Okay. But I need to know, Samson, I need to know what intake manifold it is. Oh, so it's a stealth dual plane. So that's why in stealth, the stealth is a dual plane, right? Budget 6.0 boat engine, keep it low budget, sub 5,500. We use a long runner intake manifold. A truck intake manifold is going to be best. A truck Norris cam probably be really good for that. Yeah, so a dual plane, so that's gonna limit your power on that combination. I'm thinking that that's a 235 cam, 10.5 to 1, 355, a decent head. I'm thinking that that's low to mid 400s. And I'm curious why you'd want to go with a solid roller on that combination. When are you going to run Dave Advisor's 2.2 head? I don't have it, so I can't run it. And on that note, it's time to go. Go get your projects done. It's morning time. I got to go get my video done. So go out and get something done on your project. Let me know tomorrow morning what you get done. I'll be back here, and I'll also be back tonight. So we'll see you guys all tonight. Just like